That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend Rashid, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for giving me another hour of your day. It is very important that I show you that I'm very thankful and I'm humbled that you would give me the time, because you didn't have to. As we wait for Greg to join us on the most powerful platform for truth on earth, we're gonna cut it up and just talk about a few things. So let me hit Greg up real quick, and let's see. Give me 1 second, everybody. And everybody, again, thank you for joining me. Shout out to everybody in the chat also. We are live. Oh, I just lost something in it. Let's see. Give me 1 second, everybody. All right. So, as we wait, I want to talk to you about a few things. As a matter of fact, something that caught my eye. This was from March 6th. I brought this up on another show, okay? Because we're talking about a global implosion. And we're talking about the things that are going on. Shout out to Joel Bradford. Shout out to M. Sparks. Shout out to Perseverance Chameleon. Salute. There's an article on the Economics Collapse blog. I have to bring this back up. And this article is titled 12 Shocking New All-Time Economic Records that are being reported in 2025. And the article reads like this. The U.S. economy was steamrolling in the wrong direction for 4 years under Biden. And now we have an extraordinary mess on our hands. Nobody can deny that our economic numbers are absolutely horrible right now. GDP growth is expected to be negative during the first quarter. Inflation is rising again. Home sales are at extremely depressed levels. Retail sales are down. Stores and restaurants are closing at a staggering pace. Debt levels are out of control, and mass layoffs are happening all over the nation. Now, before I go further, just that picture there, if one had a sound and sane way of thinking and a sound and sane mind, would cause you to sit back and say, is war beneficial to the nation? Is war beneficial to my government, my legacy? And is war the right route to take, especially when we continue to deficit spend and take on this enormous amount of debt, and when interest on the debt is now over $1 trillion? Think about that. Interest on the U.S. debt is now over $1 trillion. See, America could play these funny money games so long, and she's still playing the funny money games because she has over $666 trillion in off-budget, off-book debt, not including the quadrillions of dollars in the derivative market. But her acknowledged debt is $37 trillion. Her interest payments on that debt is over $1 trillion. Do you understand the magnitude of what I'm trying to convey to you all? $1 trillion is more than most nations' economies. Let me pull up something before I go further, because I like to give examples. Okay, 10 largest economies in dollars. All right, let's see. Okay, to give you an example, This was published March 4th, okay? The 10 largest economies are barely over. Brazil is 2.3 trillion. Canada is 2.23 trillion. 2.33 trillion. Italy is 2 point some trillion. You know that these are projected things. We know that Italy, Canada, France, the UK, all of these, Germany, and even the United States, economy is way less than that. We know that, right? But the top 10 are barely over $1 trillion. Well, not top 10, but the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 are from 4 trillion, even with this funny money, down to 2 trillion. Okay. Now, I'm gonna show you something to show you just how bad this situation is. Come on. Okay, continue. No, continue. Right here. Seemed like I was getting blocked then. Okay. 20. Let's go. All right. Now, after Russia, which it says it's the 11th, but we know that Russia is like the 4th largest economy, right? South Korea is 1.95 trillion. Australia is 1.88 trillion. Spain, we know that's a lie, 1.83 trillion. Mexico is 1.82 trillion. Indonesia is 1.49 trillion. Turkey is 1.46 trillion. The Netherlands is 1.2 trillion. Saudi Arabia is 1.4 trillion. Switzerland is under $1 trillion. The entire economy, even with these funny money numbers right here, right? And anything after Switzerland is under $1 trillion. And the United States interest payment on her debt is over $1 trillion. And yet we can still deficit spend. We can still sign these contracts and send armaments and aid to Israel and all of these other corrupt governments that they fund, all while at home. Veterans can't find work. Veterans are homeless. Veterans need mental help. The population is struggling. I want to ask you all, with the Defense Department, right? That they say it's a Defense Department. And they say the Defense Department is to what? Defend America against threats, domestic and foreign, right? So when they take an oath to become a serviceman, they say to defend the Constitution and America's all threats and domestic, right? What is greater America's national security than the destruction of her educational system? What is a greater threat to America's national security than to see those men and women who have served in the armed forces come home to nothing, to barely exist? What is a greater threat to the American nation, republic, and empire than to see the loss of jobs for people, children hungry and homelessness? What is a greater threat? Something 10,000 miles away or something right in your borders? Huh? Do you understand the magnitude of what I'm saying? This is going to hit home soon, and I'm talking about in 2025. If you guys listened to the show we did yesterday with Glenn Deason, and he, at the end of the show, I asked him about, does he think that this is the end of the American Republic? And he says yes. And he talked about there's an economic crisis that is coming real soon. See, those who have context, those who know economics, those who have been looking at all of this stuff, they understand that America has kicked that can down the road, and now we're at a dead-end street. This is why she's trying to use technology, and this is why she's trying to use illusion to make you believe that your enemy is here and here and here and here and here. when the enemy is the government itself? How can you, with a good conscience, and claim that you are a follower of whichever religion that you say, and then look at millions of people who are existed on subsidies at home, and you're okay with that, and then you can ship aid over somewhere else for a war? You can fund Ukraine, whole budget. How is that for national security? Because you want to play a game. That's what they call this stuff that they're doing, the great game. So they are looking at people's lives and livelihoods as a game, because they don't care, because they have what you're looking for. They have the money. They have the influence. They have the power. So you are a pawn in a game. These are megalomaniacs, I'm telling you. We'll go to the chat in a minute. Shout out to Zinya. Shout out to White Hat. This thing, let's see. What's good, M Spark? Think about this. They look at the people's lives as games. That's not a spit in the face to you. You don't feel contempt towards that. They write it in books. The great game. What is a game about life? Life is serious. What is a game about people trying to live and trying to earn a living and trying to be productive in life? What is a game about that? But in their mind, I have mine. Now you get yours. But I'm going to put up all kinds of roadblocks and impediments for you. And then I'm going to blame it on somebody else so that you can be focused on this over here, so that I can steal all the land, all of the money, and then have you guys fighting so that I know that you cannot unite to overthrow me, and I can be safe in my power and my position and my wealth. So let's go back to this article, because I didn't read it all. I just read that part. President Donald Trump's effort to pare down the federal government workforce left a mark on the labor market in February, with announced job cuts at their highest level in nearly 5 years. Outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas reported Thursday. The firm reported that U.S. employers announced 172,017 layoffs for the month, up 245% from January, and the highest monthly count since July 2020, during the heightened insecurity. What is that jumping? Hold on. Oh, it's jumping. I'm sorry, everybody. Hold on one second. Highest monthly count since July 2020, during the heightened uncertainty from the COVID pandemic. In addition, it marked the highest total for the month of February since 2009, during the global financial crisis. Now, and it says, please read those two paragraphs again. And it says, layoffs announcements have been this high during the month of February, haven't been this high since during the month of February since 2009. Wow. Now check this out. Here's something about the firing of a lot of federal employees. And we get this thing says that he's downsizing because he doesn't want big government. And that sounds good, doesn't it? But in reality, what he's doing, he's downsizing because the government needs that money, because they're refocusing on war with Iran and war with China. War with Iran and war with China. In those orders. So what looks on face value as something we need because we're tired of big government, but in reality, it's recalibration. We're trying to find more money to double our efforts so that we can churn out more war material for our expected conflagrations in West Asia, North Africa, or the Middle East, North African area, which I call the MENA region, and then pivot finally to Asia proper to challenge what they view as the greatest threat to American hegemony. Pete Hegseth, he let the cat out the bag. As I said on the show the other day, let me pull up something real quick. Let me go back to that article on RT. He let the cat out of the bag, and it went over everybody's head. And I sat there and I read the article. When I first read the article, or when I saw it, I was like, is anyone gonna say anything about this? Huh? So let's go to Hegseth. Excuse me. I hit I'm waiting for Greg to hit me back, okay? Let's see. If he doesn't hit me back in the next 15 minutes, I'll call him. All right. So let's go here. All right. Yeah. All right. Let's read this article again, okay? And Hegseth says, U.S. ready for war with China. It says the Pentagon's chief's statement comes amid escalating trade tensions with Beijing. Now, I'm not promoting this guy's book, but I'm telling you to get a sense of his thoughts about how America is never wrong in anything she does. Everybody needs to fall in line because America is the greatest country ever, and everybody else are peons. And if you don't agree with what we say, how we say it, and the way we do it, then to hell with you. And everything that we do is benign and benevolent, and everybody else can go to hell. And that's a summary of his book. He is anti-Chinese, anti-Iranian, anti-Islamic. And it's no secret to this. And why would you put him in that office knowing that? Because you know they have to be vetted. Especially at a moment like this. It's because you have plans for something. It's no secret you're anti-Iranian, anti-Islamic, and anti-Chinese. Why would you do that? And you're pro-Trump, meaning that you, if it comes down to it, and there's uprising in the streets over prices, lack of food, the pushing of a major war, because a war with Iran is going to bring a lot of suffering and conflict. I'm telling you this. They think Iran is a cakewalk. They're going to learn something shortly, okay? You put these people in different positions, important strategic positions. You remove everybody else that you deem might have sympathy for the people or might have sympathy for someone or the Constitution or something other than the leader in office, and you become somewhat of a tyrant or dictatorship in a way. And I remember a mentor of mine, Saladin, used to tell me at the end of America would become like a dictatorship. And as I was talking to him, at the time, I was like a 16-year-old kid. He was telling me this. And I'm like, huh? And he said, at the end, America will become like a dictatorship. And he also said this, that a president would come in that would not be the average president, he would not be a politician. He or she would not be a politician. He told me that. And I'm looking at him like, man, I'm listening, but a 16-year-old kid, you know what I mean? So when I'm looking at this now, and he said that they're going to attack Persia. Persia is Iran. And Iran is going to give them everything they have, and it's going to turn into a regional conflagration in the MENA region, the North African Middle Eastern region. And after America takes a huge beating there, and Iran takes a huge beating there, because both of them are going to give it as good as they take. America is going to be forced out of America and the UK, he said to me, will be forced out of the Middle Eastern region, the North African region. And then they will try to pivot their focus on China. And I'm looking at all of this stuff happen. This is why I come to you the way that I come to you. It's because by the grace of God, I had a little insight on some of the stuff that was happening. So that's why the track record, I tell everybody, go back and see the videos from the beginning. I've been saying the stuff that is happening right now. I've been saying on my platform, on my show. This didn't come out of the blue. I see my guy M Sparks for the super chat. I'm gonna highlight you. And then I gotta read this what Pete says. And M Sparks also said we broke it in a joke. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Listen how Hex let the cat out the bag. The Pentagon chief statement comes amid escalating trade tensions with Beijing. Well, who escalated them? No one asked that question. The way they frame sentences, you have to look at the framing of the sentences. One should ask, if there are escalating tensions with Beijing, who escalated them? And once we understand who escalated the tensions or who made the tensions, then we get a clear understanding of who the aggressor is. Did China come out the blue and sanction America? No. But did America sanction China? Yeah. Did America threaten China? Yeah. Did China threaten America? Only in response to the threats that America made. So there was no escalation on the part of China. There was only retaliation. Do not get the two mixed up. If you hit me and I hit you back, that is not escalation. That's retaliation. Perseverance Chameleon said, still here listening, but bopping the floor. Gotcha. Life is real, right? But listen, if you hit me and then I hit you back and then I put you on your back and start pummeling you, that is an escalation. But for me to respond to your initial action is not escalation. The laws of science won't bear witness to that, will bear witness to what I'm saying. Because the law of science says that any reaction should expect an equal or greater reaction. Right? So that is a response to the reaction. To the action. White Hat says it's true. Retaliation isn't offense. It is defense. That's what I'm saying. But the way they structure the sentences and we read them, we read that and then we keep going without contemplating what they're saying to us. And that is a big mistake when dealing with these people because the propaganda is enormous and it's powerful. So listen to what it says after this. The U.S. is prepared to go to war with China if necessary. The Pentagon has announced, listen to this part, following Beijing's threat of tariff retaliation. Now, hold on. Let's go to something real quick. We got to get a clear understanding. Listen what AI says. Retaliation in general means acting against someone in response to a perceived or actual harm. So when they say the U.S. is prepared to go to war if necessary, the Pentagon has announced following. So that means before something had to happen. So if he's saying something had to initiate China's reaction. What initiated it? It was the tariffs and the threats from the United States. So if we look at who initiated the conflict, who initiated is the aggressor, not the one defending themselves, but in bizarro world, the way they put this stuff, they understand that most people are lazy. And they don't look at the construct of sentences. But when you're read for understanding, that means you have to look at the construct of sentences and paragraphs. Or else they'll get you. And he says, following Beijing's threat of tariff retaliation, that means Beijing threatened to respond to the initial action of America. And then after Beijing threatened to respond, America starts talking about that they are prepared to go to war. Well, let's look at this for a second before we go further. Is Beijing building up military bases close to the United States? Is America building up bases close to China? Yes. Is Beijing saying that they have to pivot to the Pacific and pivot to the Atlantic to stop America's rise or consolidation of its power? No. But openly in all think tanks, all open sources, all government officials have publicly stated that America deems China as its greatest imminent threat, because China not only has the potential, but it has the capability to challenge America's position. To challenge. See, America in the West looks at China's rise in the way that they rose. How did the West rise? Through pillaging, robbing, raping, and colonizing. And they believe that if China gets in a position of power, with all the hell that America and the West put the world through on their rise, and as they dominated, that they would put it back on the back of America and the West. Everybody don't think with their sociopathic mind frame. That is what's eating in their craw, that a non-white, non-Western nation is now in a position to challenge the Western world. And not only challenge the Western world, but economically, politically, geopolitically, technologically, industrially, beat back every effort made offensively by the West to stymie their growth or to hinder their progress. And this is what has them up in arms. How dare you rise up to challenge my reign? When a king has ruled so long and the king is inebriated on the power of the throne, and they see some young buck coming up and is challenging their throne, guess what they do? They try to rid themselves of that threat, because they've been on the throne so long and they believe that it is their inherent right to rule, inherent right to dictate. Think about what I'm saying. If what I'm saying is off point, somebody just say it. But everything that I'm saying is, we're proving it right now. Right now. Salute to Cheese Puff. White Hat says, West thinks we have to get punched and give the other cheek. Thank you. In real life, I will hit back. That is the law of nature. See, we don't execute the law of nature. America executes the law of nature. The first law of nature is self-preservation. That means that if your life and your security is at stake, America will go to war. Even if it's not at stake, she'll trump up something to make war legitimate in her eyes. But how dare you? Russia does not have a right to defend itself on its own borders. Here it is, you telling Russia what it does not have the right to do on its own borders, and you're in Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon. You're in on Iran's border. You're in Armenia. You're in Georgia. You're in Ukraine, and you're telling somebody else that they don't have the right to defend themselves. Man, see, it's different with me. Man, if God knew what He was doing for not allowing me to be a head of a state. Because these guys act like punks. You're supposed to say what you mean what you say, so there's no ambiguity anywhere, so that people will know how to take you. That's the way I was raised. Look a person in the eye, shake their hands, tell them what it will be or what it won't be, so that when people deal with you, they'll know that, hey, this is an honorable person. And if they say this, this, and this, then I'm going to take them for their word. So there won't be any mistakes. All this geopolitical theatrics and all these games behind the scene, that would not occur with me, because I don't go for that. I don't play those games. My name is not Milton Bradley, and I'm not Parker Brothers. You know, let's go down with M. Spark says, exactly, they are victims of their own wicked, diabolical minds. You better believe it. And let's read a little bit more of what Higgs have said, okay? Because this is very important to get insight into the ideology of the War Department of America. And when you remember now, when you get the ideology of the War Department, what does the head of the War Department represent? It represents the person who appointed that head, right? That administration. So the administration, if it doesn't distance itself from and fire that head, then you can say that they agree with that head. They may not say it publicly, but we get every inkling that is their perspective, because they're still there. They have the backing and the support of the head, right? Because if you disagreed with the person that you appointed, you would tell them to change their policies, or you would remove them and place somebody else that you agree with, right? Am I right? Am I not right? Okay, now let's go further. With that understanding, let's read a little bit more. And understanding is golden. Because as my teacher taught me, we don't all understand. So when you get an understanding is golden. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth clarified the U.S. position early on Wednesday in an interview with Fox News, responding to the Chinese embassy in the U.S., which said Beijing was ready to fight any type of war. Well, they took that out of context. Beijing was responding to questions that was presented to it. They left that part out. When they report it like this, they make it seem like Beijing just stood up and said, we're ready to go to war. That's not how it happened. Just like lying is misleading people, omission is misleading people oftentimes too. So they omitted what led up to him saying what he said, okay? But I tell you what, they think everybody is a dumb bump on the frog. But it says this. We are prepared, Hegseth said, adding, those who long for peace must prepare for war, stressing deterrence in the warrior ethos. And do you know, in his book, he talks about America needs a new crusade against Islam, against the Middle East. Go read this man's book. This dude is off the chain. The Crusades. Man, and you guys, one day I'm going to teach you about the Crusades and what really happened, okay? But anyway, so it says, we live in a dangerous world with powerful ascendant. That means on the way up. Why would he say ascendant? Because he understands the position of America. America is not on the ascendant ladder. She's descending. She was ascending, then she stagnated, and now she's declining or descending. While we have Russia ascending to preeminence. It's rising back to its former glory. We see China like a rocket taking off. We see Indonesia. I think Indonesia is one of the largest economies in the world. We see, and also it's the largest Muslim population in the world too. Country. It's the largest country with the Muslim population. Gold Mo 242 Crusaders killed Christians and Jews most. Yeah. They were fighting over the body of Jesus in the Holy Sepulchre. It's a lot going on with that. Excuse me. Excuse me. What they told you in history, in the history classes, is not what took place. I'm sorry to tell you that. You need to go to the Library of Congress. You need to go to all of these well-hidden places for understanding, okay? I'm talking to the masses of the people. I'm not talking to Goldmo. Seriously. But he says this. We live in a dangerous world with powerful, ascendant countries that have very different ideologies, he said. They're rapidly increasing their defense spending, modernizing technology, and here it is. This is what they fear the most, okay? This last part of that. I'm going to reread this whole paragraph. It's just a short sentence. And then I'm going to put emphasis on the last part of the sentence, okay? To give you an idea of what is stuck in their craw. We live in a dangerous world with powerful, ascendant countries that have very different ideologies, he said. They're rapidly increasing their defense spending, modernizing technology. They want to supplant the U.S., the United States. So he's saying that China wants to become the number one power. Russia may want to become the number one power. Iran may want to become the number one power. But then I asked the question, who the hell gives America the right to be number one? Didn't she have to supplant somebody? And then the country that she supplant someone before them? So who gives America the right to just maintain that position? Huh? Do you ever think about that? They want to challenge us in the Indo-Pacific. They mean the Asia-Pacific, but they want to turn it to the Indo-Pacific as to minimize China's influence, right? So they want to supplant us as the number one power there. Well, why should you be the number one power in the Asia-Pacific or the Indo-Pacific when you're not even a resident of that region? You know what that is like? That is like China saying America wants to supplant us in South America as the number one power, or in Latin America, or in Central America as the number one power. Do you see how foolish that is? So you're telling me the person that lives in the neighborhood does not have a right to be the neighborhood watchman? The one that lives in that neighborhood doesn't have the right to be the head of the neighborhood association, but you're living in 3 states over are trying to dictate to those people in that neighborhood how they should live, breathe, act, govern. If that is not racist, if that is not hegemonic, if that is not fascist, tell me what is. Huh? Talk to me, because I'm talking to you. So, Cheese Puff says, a recent example of Western media shaping the narrative comes from Australia. 2 Chinese warships completely within international rules perform war games off the coast of Australia. I remember that. That just came out a few days ago. Now, was Australia's shores, right? Now, if Russia or China sell a ship in international water, that's provocative. But if America or NATO flies a warplane close to Russia or China, or sails a warship through the Taiwan Strait, we're just exercising international law. We're in international airspace, international waters. That's not provocative. The provocateur is never provocative. The victim is. Man, stop this. Man, stop. So Hex have let the cat out the bag with this. And he knows it. But he said that in such a brash way. You know why? Because he understands that people in America and in the West are lazy. He understands that they don't want anything that's going to catch their attention. Unless keeping up with the Kardashians, basketball, football, baseball, soccer. He understands that people are about sport and play. So he can say those things without blowback, without the people standing up and going out after him. That's the real deal. So let's go to something real quick. Let me play this clip right here. This is an old clip, but I'm gonna play it because it goes right along with what
the Cold War, the United States, it put together a security strategy, a security document, very openly saying that its security was dependent on hegemony. So as long as the US was dominant, hegemonic on a global scale, this would be the foundation for security. So any dispersal of power, which reduces the dominance of the US, will be seen as a threat. Now, again, before you had US and China, they were believed to be in this peaceful interdependence. The problem was it was never sustainable. It was supposed to be interdependence between, the dominant and the weaker party. But you saw over time that China was producing and saving while the United States was consuming and borrowing. So as a result, China was accruing more and more industrial power, more and more advanced technology, and this ungodly amount of foreign reserves. Meanwhile, we saw the US was losing a lot of productive power, and sinking further into debt. So this was unsustainable in many ways. And at some point, this partnership had to collapse because the US became worried about the growing strength of China, as it feared that China might dethrone the United States, while China became more worried that the United States would then turn to economic and military means to prevent its growth. And this is, at this point, you really needed an agreement where the two big countries could come together and say, listen, the new security system really has to be based on a multipolar format. We can't have this, maintain this unipolar moment of based on US dominance when it's no longer reflected in reality. And again, the United States, it didn't show any interest in this, which is why China began to pursue, technological sovereignty by decoupling from the United States, build its own transportation corridors with this Belt and Road initiatives, develop this financial architecture, new one decoupled from the US with new payment systems and banks
Sure.
and new trading currencies. And again, the main reason was China was never offered an equal position, as we saw, for example, with the United States blocking Chinese efforts to get, for example, a greater role within the IMF. So,
yeah, okay. Oh yeah, okay, Greg. Thank you. All right, bud. I'm sorry, everybody. I was on the phone with Greg right then and there. Greg said this is what's going on right here. Greg said he's so messed up right now. He says YouTube won't let him post videos. YouTube is blocking him. This is no lie. He's just telling me this. He can't access certain things. He's trying to access. I told you guys think I'm joking with you. YouTube is after me and people like me, like Greg. And he said, give him about 15 or 20 minutes. He's really going to try to get on. He's trying his best, okay? And he says that it was even wiped out of his schedule. So, and Greg is reliable when it comes to stuff like this. So I know if he hadn't hit me back up, something was going on or whatever. So I just hung up with him and show you this. Now I can't show you his number. That's a personal number. But I can show you his name. Let's see if the camera the camera will not let me see. I just hung up with him. But yeah, all of this stuff, you see that the Americans are crazy, right? And when I say look at the American government. They are so hell-bent on domination that they're willing to go through any lengths. And common sense tells me, and there's an old saying that when you're in a hole, put the shovel down and stop digging. Ask for help. Because I don't care how much you dig, you're not going to dig your way to China from America. It's not happening. And it seems like the people in power, they don't understand. Hold on one second. How's it going, son?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm all right. My oldest son just came on. But anyway, he just came. But like I said, they don't sit down and think, hold on, I'm antagonizing the entire world. These are the very people who buy my debt. These are the very people I trade with. These are the very people I look to help and push my policy. Why don't they look at it like that? It's because in their mind, everybody is expendable. And the empire must reign at all. And everybody else is expendable. Nobody else matters as much as the empire. That's why after they say, God bless America. Do you think God will bless you for putting bombs, bunker buster bombs, killing innocent people? That kind of God bless. I don't want that God on my side. Killing and making millions of people homeless, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Because this is a game in your eyes, that's the kind of God I don't want to serve. No matter what you do, you justify it. Because you look at yourself as above everybody else because you're American. That's the mind state of Haitian. Go read. If you think I'm lying and I'm not pushing this book, go read this book. Go. Don't buy it. Just go look at it online. No lie. Everybody else is the fault for the world problem except the world hegemon. Everybody. And if you don't come along, if Europe doesn't come along, the hell with Europe too. That's their mind. Man, I don't want no friends like that. You know, because friends like that, when they can't get their way, they'll turn on you and kill you. You understand? So let's go back to the article on the economic collapse blog. And it says, wow. And the total for the first 2 months of this year is also the highest that we have seen since 2009. January's planned reductions brought the total through the first 2 months of the year to 221,812, also the highest for the period since 2009, and up 33% from the same time in 2014. In case you haven't figured it out yet, we have a major crisis on our hands, and the economic numbers that we are getting clearly reflect this. The following are 12 shocking new all-time economic records that are being reported in 2025. Shocking, okay? Number one, our trade deficit with the rest of the world has surged to an all-time record high. You heard what it said? Trade deficit. The U.S. trade deficit widened to a record in January as companies scrambled to secure goods from overseas before President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on America's largest trading partners. The gap in goods and services trade widened 34% from the prior month to 131 billion 400 million. Commerce Department data showed Thursday the deficit was larger than all but one estimate in a Bloomberg survey of economists. Number two, the percentage of Americans that are rating their retirement savings have never been higher. Hold on. Is that the sign of a progressive, enduring, fair, just, and evolving economy? Or is that the sign of a devolving, unhinged, unequal economic system? Huh? I'm asking. So as we talk about, let's go back up to that number one. Just talk about the trade deficit for a minute. I'm going to bring something up to you guys, okay? I'm going to play something for you guys since we're on this trade deficit. And I didn't even know that this would be going hand in hand with this that I had on my show. So I want you to listen to something, okay? Listen to this clip right here from me.
Let's bring in Steve Hanke. He's a professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. Professor, do you think there will be some kind of compromise in this tariff war between Mexico and the United States, also Canada?
Well, not really, because President Trump has many contradictory ideas, many things floating around in his head. But when it comes to trade, he's a mercantilist, and his view is that the foreigners are basically engaged in nefarious activities that cause the U.S. to run a trade deficit. And he thinks that trade deficit is bad. The problem is it's just nonsense. The trade deficit in the United States is created in the good old USA because there is a deficit of savings relative to investment in the United States. And by definition in economics, that deficit is filled by a trade deficit. Foreigners come in and fill a deficit. Now in China, for example, they have just the opposite situation. They have a savings surplus relative to investment. So internally, China creates the conditions for what has to be, by definition, a trade surplus, which they have. Same thing in Japan, same thing in Switzerland. But the U.S. has had a trade deficit for a long time, since 1975, and it's all created by America. It's not created by foreigners. Foreigners just fill the void.
So, Professor, I just want to make sure I understand. Explain to us how tariffs work, if you will. Who will be most affected by these tariffs, by these tit-for-tat measures, at the end of the day, is it the American consumer?
Well, yes, to some extent, it's the American consumer. But the main thing that happens with tariffs, if America puts tariffs on, the cost of imported inputs into the production process, into manufacturing, go up, and actually it hurts exporters. People don't realize, once you look at how it works, there are three elements that are affected. One is people directly consuming. Let's say they buying avocados from Mexico. Well, they're going to pay more from the avocados, or bananas from Ecuador. They'll pay more for those. So that's a direct consumer. But there's an indirect aspect, and that is manufacturing operations that import inputs, parts, and things that are needed as inputs to manufacturing. They will get hit, and those manufacturers will be hurt by their exports will be more expensive. So the exporters will be hurt. And the third party is, of course, just the middleman who is in between the exporter and importer.
Right.
They get hurt too.
So Professor,
it's just a loser's game. Everybody loses.
and when consumer confidence is down with all this uncertainty about tariffs, are you perhaps concerned about a recession?
Well, I'm concerned about a recession because of one main thing. The stock of money in the United States is lower today than it was in June of 2022, and that's only happened 4 times in the United States history since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was established. And all 4 of those times, with a contraction in the money supply, you have a slowdown that results. And that slowdown, I think, will be occurring this year in the United States. And consumer confidence is going down, and that will just aggravate it, you see.
So let me get this straight. We're running out of time, and if you could just reply this to my question as briefly as possible, Professor Hankey. Is there a better way here than imposing tariffs on Mexico, China, Canada, and starting April 2nd on a host of other countries as well?
Yes, the best way is free trade. Why should the government be involved getting in between a buyer and seller who are agreeing on the price and terms of a trade? This is the government coming in and saying, no, you can't do that, or we're going to tax you, or we'll put sanctions on you, or some other interference. Free trade.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Steve Hankey.
No problem. Hold on, everybody. I'm on the phone with Greg right now. Yeah. Life happens, man. Things like that. You know how they try to stop the channels and stuff. I understand. Okay. So we got it. We'll do the makeup Tuesday, 11 your time, 10 my time. Got it. I'm live, man. I'll talk to you shortly. That was Greg right there. We're doing he put it in his physical schedule this time and make sure. So we're gonna do a makeup show with Greg Tuesday this week, coming up at 10 o'clock Central Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. I told you guys, you guys get to see it and live in color how they do be. Okay? How YouTube and the censors do. Man, I'm telling you, it's real. But one elephant doesn't stop the circus, right? So let's go. I saw something in here. White Hat said I took some break from the internet because I had to work for almost a month at a mining site. When I came back, I was unsubbed from this channel. It's some kind of algorithm. Absolutely, it's an algorithm. Do you know, everybody that's listening? Do you know that my personal YouTube icon or whatever you want to call it, channel or whatever. I tried to go to the Red Pill Diaries, and all I could get was that wrench, that little wrench thing that they have up there when you can't find a channel. So I had to switch to my Red Pill Diaries channel to access my Red Pill Diaries before we went live. No lie. I know that. I know what they're doing. It doesn't matter. But let's go. I want to keep along this subject for a few more minutes. We're going to keep it going a little bit. Gold mode 242. Rashid, will you cover the situation in Syria? Sadly, a lot of Muslims are defending the thugs in Syria, claiming they are fighting for Sunnis. I think I covered that. I think on my last live stream, if I'm not mistaken. And I did it. I did an in-depth one on Patreon on that. I was telling everybody what was going on before it was making the news, because somebody whispered in my ear and told me. So I will hold on one second. Yeah. It's over there. I think it's over there. I'm in my office and my son's looking for something. I think it's behind the solar panel, one of the solar panels. But anyway, yeah. And if you see it, if you don't see it, use your phone. So yeah. As I was saying, I was talking to the people, and I was letting the people know what was going on. Actually, the bombing that took place in Syria. So I'll just talk to you for a minute on this matter. HTS, they're thugs. A lot of the Western people say these are Turkish thugs, but the Turks have a lot of influence on it, but in reality, these are U.S. thugs. These are British thugs. Remember, all of this comes from Imperial Britain. The Wahhabism and all of that stuff. Never lose focus of that. When they talk about Islamic extremism, all one has to do is go back to their writings on this stuff. When the Brits felt it in their interest to radicalize people so that they could keep their power in the Near East or the Middle East. And so they came up with this brand of Islam. They paid certain people to push this brand. And they radicalized it. I'm not making this up. Just go look at history and then read some of the writings. And they radicalized it, Wahhabism. Right? And they pushed this moniker, this extreme branch in there as to keep those who are moderate or those who are, I would say, pacifists, subjugated and at the bottom, and they could use their stooges, the Wahhabis and these other branches, to terrorize Muslims, terrorize Christians, terrorize Jews, and give Islam a bad name. This is straight from the Crown. I'm not making this up. This is straight from the Crown. And if I was lying to you, guess what? Somebody would come on and say, hey, Rashid is lying about that. And America, as the British Empire in appearance seemed on the descendant, which they still are lock in step with the American Empire. They're one and the same. Don't let these people fool you. The British and the American Empire are one and the same. Okay? These are the two daughters of Babylon. Remember that. Babylon had two daughters coming up. These are the two daughters of Babylon. And so America used the tricks of the British to do the same, to cement her power. Why do you think Brzezinski was in Afghanistan? In one moment, the Taliban was being thanked for being brave warriors, right? You can look at the Rambo, at the end of the Rambo movies. They thank the Mujahideen, which is the Taliban. Go look at them at the end of them. You know, when the credits are rolling, they thank the Taliban in Rambo. They thanked Bin Laden. Go look at the newspaper clippings when America referred to him as a man of peace, a warrior of peace, right? And when he used up his usefulness, he became a tyrant, right? Then they branched off and used some of their minions to start, what is it, ISIS? From Taliban to Al Qaeda to ISIS. Now, what is it? And what is this one now? HTS. All of these are British and U.S. assets. As a matter of fact, there was I was just looking at this. What channel was it on? Oh my God, it escapes me. This was last week, and it had one of the professors. Oh man, it's escaping me right now. One of the respected professors of the West. He was talking about how a lot of these people are British and U.S. Special Forces, the ones that you see in mass. And they've even documented tattoos, U.S. and British Special Forces tattoos on them and everything, you know. And these are used to incite violence and division. And they scream Allahu Akbar for the cameras as to make people in the West believe that the West is justified in going over there doing what they're doing. So they set up this enemy, which is themselves. Then they go and fight the enemy, which are the people who they want to subjugate. Right? And then they claim they're fighting the enemy, which they set up, which is not the case. So in Syria, I was telling you that prior to what is going on in the news, what is being shown in the news, that Israel was bombing certain military locations, okay? They were bombing some military locations. And these military locations that they were bombing some of them were not under HTS's control. A lot of people did not know that. Why do you think HTS did not complain about the bombardment of certain military areas in Syria? Right? These were still under the control of some of the holdouts of the Syrian Arab army. Okay? So Israel was bombing them because they had intelligence, and the U.S. had got intelligence that that it would soon be an uprising of the holdouts of the supporters of Bashar Assad to make a move on HTS. And so when it took place, notice that they started bombing before the head choppers started chopping heads. The HTS thugs, that Israel was bombing those strategic sites, right? And then when the supporters of Assad got a leg up, the United States started talking about suing for peace, right? Started talking to Russia about we need to bring this some kind of unity government together, because they understood that there were holdouts in Latakia, there were holdouts across Syria in certain military bases that still had air defenses. That's why Israel was bombing the air defense sites. Okay, it's more to that. But the head choppers are worried. Turkey is worried. Israel is worried. All right. The U.S. is worried. And that's, go to the Patreon, look at I think it's 30-40 minute video on that. And I was the one talking about it before it hit the news. All right. Thank my source over there in not occupied Palestine, but right now they're in Lebanon, but they're in and out of Syria. I thank you for the information that you gave me. I really appreciate that. So now let's get back to the subject at hand. All right. The tariffs, they're destroying America. Think about this. Tariffs are a tax on the people. Do you know that? If you implement a tariff, that means that the goods coming from China, all right? Say, for instance, you were getting these goods in the stores for $4, and now you have to pay $10. That's a tax on you, not a tax on China. You understand that? But in bizarro world, they'll make you think that they're doing you a favor. These people, that shows you the lunacy of these people. And it's not just in one person in government. This is what is pervasive. And they've shown you that. My sister used to tell me this. And when I was in high school, my older sister, which she thinks she's my second mother. You know? my sister acts just like my grandmother. But anyway, she used to always say, when a person shows you who they are, believe them. America has shown us who she is. She continues to show us who she is. Britain showed us who she was. Britain is showing us who she is. Why won't anybody believe it? When I tell you that, hey, they're preparing for thermonuclear war, some people say, oh, no, that's outrageous. Well, if they're not preparing, then why are they provoking everybody? Why are they pushing to that threshold? And why are they now deploying nuclear weapons? You don't do that even lunatics don't go that far. And why were you upgrading your nuclear arsenal? You're not doing it for show. It costs money for that. What you're doing is to show the world that I'm prepared to kill everybody if I can't rule. I will burn this house down instead of letting somebody else own it. They can't accept in their minds, because they've ruled for the past 100+ years, couple hundred years in succession. What is it? The U.S., France, Britain, Germany, Spain, Belgium, Italy. They've ruled the globe in succession. And I didn't put them in the right order, but I'm just saying, right? And in their minds, they cannot see someone outside of the Western world order ruling. Why do you think there's a big brouhaha about a new European architecture? Huh? Russia must be included in this new European architecture, security alliance. Russia must be a part of any new European security alliance. The European, we need a new security alliance. Hold on. Pause. Now let us think through the fog. There are not any Asian nations attacking Europe or the United States. There are not any Latin American nations attacking Europe or the United States. There are not any Near Eastern nations, or what they term as the Middle East, or we call West Asia. No West Asian nations attacking or occupying Europe or the United States. There are no African nations attacking or occupying Europe or the United States. There are none of these nations stealing the resources of the United States or Europe. There are none of them that are trying to dictate to the United States and Europe how to live their lives, how to govern their countries, how to use their resources. But if we look at this in reverse, it cannot be said in the opposite. Everywhere you look, Europe and the United States are trying to dictate, dominate to everybody. You must be a democracy. You must. Now Europe is talking about being a democracy, and yet they shut down democracy in Moldova, in Romania, in Georgia. Now Georgia came through with it. They shut it down in Ukraine. They're trying to shut it down in other areas where they seem to be losing their puppets and their stooges. They want to tell you how to govern yourselves. And I want you to understand something. They are trying to dictate to cultures and countries that have existed thousands of years before they ever came into being. How to live, how to govern, how to conduct domestic and foreign policy. And yet they are the ones telling us that Europe needs a new European security architecture when there's no one threatening to attack them or is attacking them. But the United States and Europe are in Africa. They're in Latin America. They're in Asia. They're in West Asia. Bizarro world politics. And they have become so inebriated on what they call Western values, which is in reality colonialism and domination, that they are now feeding upon their own populations, disregarding the will of their own populations, ignoring the protests, ignoring the demands of their own populations. That's what empires do when they start collapsing. When they eat as much as they can eat on the outside, then they start feeding upon themselves. We're watching it. The Western world is in utter and total decline. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay? Now, let's go a little further with this article, okay? Excuse me. Number 2, let's go down to number 2 again. The percentage of Americans that are rating their retirement savings have never been higher. More Americans are rating their retirement savings to cover emergency expenses, taking early withdrawals from their 401ks. A record 4.8% of account holders took hardship withdrawals last year, up from 3.6% in 2023, according to Vanguard Group, which examined data from nearly 5 million people with 401k type accounts. Number 3, this year, the price of a dozen eggs in the United States has soared to the highest level ever. In January, the average price of a dozen eggs hit a record high of $4.95, up from $2.52 a year prior. Now, I don't know where they're talking about, but a dozen eggs here cost $7 or $8. A dozen eggs. And I remember just prior to the pandemic, you can go through the swap meets, the flea markets, and you could get 2 or 3 dozen for $1. And this is what inflation does. It eats away at your purchasing power. This is what tariffs do. They destroy the man in the mud, the woman in the mud, the middle class. And I don't like to call them the lower class because that's just talking down to people. I'll just put anybody that's not rich in the middle class. Okay. They destroy the middle class. It's outrageous. And so what they're doing to the American people right now is peeing on their faces and tell them, look out, it looks like there's a high possibility for heavy rain. These people are crazy, man. Let me see something before I read the next one. Yeah, desert mansions. Yeah, I see that. The U.S. are importing and training Uyghurs. When they are finished in Syria, the plan is for the Uyghurs to return to Xinjiang province and terrorize China. Well, you know, the United States is sanctioning Thailand right now because Thailand returned some Uyghurs who were trained by the United States, and they were supposed to be transferred from Thailand. That was one of their destinations, from Thailand to Syria, right? But the Chinese requested their return because they committed some heinous and they committed some violent acts of terror. If you only knew, but the Western media they don't report that part. Okay, but let's see. Yeah, Panther. One day they were freedom fighters. The next day they were terrorists. Absolutely. And Nikki, you know what's crazy about the whole thing with the terrorists on the freedom fighters one day and the terrorists the next day. If you look at the word Al Qaeda, someone told me that means the database, the CIA database. These are the assets that they let loose. And then, have you ever noticed this? That when a so-called terrorist operation take place, immediately the United States and the Western press knows the name of the organization, the leader, their whole family tree, everything. But prior to that, they don't mention it, right? But when the bombing or the so-called suicide attack take place, they know everything about the organization just out of the blue. Out of the blue. And notice all of these attacks always are strategically timed. You think those are coincidences? Better wake up. You better wake up. All right. So let's go a little further. Number 4, the delinquency rate for subprime auto loans. Excuse me, everybody. The delinquency rate for subprime auto loans that are at least 60 days delinquent just hit a record level we have never seen before. Man, good Lord. It says 60 plus day auto loan delinquencies in the subprime cohort, less credit worthy borrowers, hit 6.56% in December 2024, the highest ever recorded. That's up from 6.01% in November 2024 and 6.27% in 2023. Go to the, I just saw the screen light up. Hold on one second, everybody. I got to go to a super chat. Greg will be back on. He'll be on. I talked to him. As a matter of fact, I was talking to him while I was live on the show. We got a reset for Tuesday of this week coming up at the same time at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern. There's a lot that came up. They're trying to prevent Greg from doing some shows, from putting videos out, from doing all of this stuff. And of course they would do it on the day he's supposed to be on this show. So that's saying something. All right. Let's go. I see oh my God. Luca Tony, thank you so much for your $20 super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Use the force. Love your energy. This is the only way I can come. This is the only way. See, I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about the truth. And so I think other people should display passion also, to let the people know that, look, I care about the well-being of people. You're not just a number. You're not just a face. These people out here are lunatics, and they're trying to stop the progression and rise of a greater world, a fairer, a more just world, a more equitable world. So I'm going to stay on my square, and I'm going to teach freedom, justice, and equality. Let me say that again. I'm going to stay on my square, and I'm going to teach freedom, justice, and equality till the casket drops. And the thing about it is, I have to go about teaching freedom, justice, and equality this way because other people, sometimes people don't get it the other way. So I want to give you a lot of examples. I want to intertwine it with geopolitics, with economics, with politics. And then I want to give you these examples so that it can connect to your heart and to your head, so that you can understand it. Because these people talk over your head. I used to listen all the time when I was coming up. I was like, these people are talking over most people's head. We got to make this information accessible to the average person. We've got to relay it in the average person's terms, because that's who we want to benefit. Because the so-called above average people are the ones who are exploiting us. So that's why I'm here, and I want to thank you for your appreciation with the super chat. I really appreciate that. Okay. Number 5. In January, pending home sales dropped to an all-time record low. Contracts to buy previously owned homes fell to a record low in January as prospective buyers were constrained by higher mortgage rates and housing prices. The National Association of Realtors, which I'm a member of, right, since 2004, 2003, something like that, 2002 or 3, something like that. Yeah, by trade, I'm a real estate agent. It said on Thursday that its pending home sales index, which is based on signed contracts, declined by 4.6% last month to 70.6, an all-time low. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast contracts which become, I think this is a misspelling. Or we'll just say it like that, which becomes sales after a month or two, falling by 1.3 in January. Pending home sales were down 5.2% from a year ago. So all of these economic barometers are showing us that something is up. And America knows that the elite knows this. So guess what they're doing? They're preparing for war. What did Jerry Salente say? When all else fails, they do what? They take us to war, right? When all else fails, they do what? They take us to war, right? So it says, number 6, it is being projected that the U.S. will run a record high agricultural trade deficit of $49 billion in 2025. And these tariffs are not helping, because China just sanctioned soybeans and other stuff. And it's going to hurt the farmers. And remember, when Trump offers aid to the farmers, and everybody needs farmers, but when Trump offers aid to the farmers, that's another tax on you. Did you know that? Because that he is printing money out of thin air. That's deficit spending. That's an added tax on the taxpayer. You know? So let's go a little further. The U.S., known for being a global agriculture powerhouse, has never imported so much food. Inbound shipments of everything from avocados to coffee and sugar are expected to drive the country's agricultural trade deficit to a record $49 billion this year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said in its Trade Outlook report. At the same time, America's most widely grown crops have been losing overseas markets over the past decade. It's a stark turnaround for a nation that once used to use its abundant food supplies as a tool of statecraft, with the U.S. now facing a future of persistent agricultural trade deficits. That's something. That right there is more dire than the real estate collapse. Why? Because without food, you don't eat. And you used to be the global powerhouse. America was so rich in food was so abundant in America that she would take, this is no lie, go look this up, okay, to see if I'm embellishing or I'm lying to you all. America was so powerful and so self-sufficient in food that she would take food and fill cargo ships full of food, send them out to sea and sink them so that she can keep the price of food high. This is no lie. This is no lie at all. She had that much agriculture power that she would fill cargo ships with food, send them out to sea and sink them to artificially inflate the prices of food at home. That was a knock on her. And now she's importing everything. And guess what? Russia is one of the largest producers of food and exporters of food, right? And you sanction Russia and you waged a covert war with Russia. So if you go to war with China, and China has stood by Russia's side, exporting certain needed chips and all this other stuff to Russia, helping cover Russia economically, right? And politically, and stood toe-to-toe with Russia. You think Russia's going to turn its back on somebody that helped them through their toughest times? Do you believe that you'll still be able to import the amount of food and gas and oil that you do? Huh? And you're waging war against his partner, knowing that when the war is over, if you had your way, you're going to just double back around and wage war against them again. See, this is that catch-22 that America now finds herself in. So now listen, it says, let's get to these last few. It says, number 7, Coresight research is telling us that approximately 15,000 stores will be permanently closed in the United States in 2025. That would be an all-time record by a wide margin. So you want to initiate a tariffs war, a trade war with everybody because you're losing your competitiveness around the world. And other people are trading outside of the dollar. And you want to alienate more people to go outside of the dollar by sanctioning them to try to keep them inside the dollar. Tell me, for any sound person out there, does that make sense to you? And you're doing this at a time when you're suffering agriculturally, politically, and economically. Tell me, how does that make sense? Huh? How does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, how do you plan to put that together to make dollars? Huh? So it goes further and says, number 8, the price of gold has moved above $2,900 an ounce for the first time ever. Stop right there. To show you what I mean about hubris, about imperialism, and and the death of the dollar, pound, and euro. Once London controlled all the strings of the silver and gold markets, the London Gold Exchange. Okay, now China has a a Shanghai Gold Exchange, which rivals London's now. And do you know that unlike in London, where they lease it, and how they have paper gold contracts, the Chinese are more solidified in their holding and trading of gold. If you buy gold, you get gold. And so there has been an outpour of the gold that was left in the West to the East. You know that? There's been an outpour of the gold that was left in the West to the East. The East is now the largest holder of gold. And when I mean the East, I mean everybody outside of Europe and the United States. That's why you saw Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali kick France and the United States out. They wanted access and they wanted control over their own gold reserves because they have huge gold potential, huge ore potentials. In any economic crisis, this is a hedge against total uncertainty and collapse. So you see Africa reaching out, and then you see who was it? Right under the Biden administration threatened war with Mexico, when Mexico said that they were thinking about backing the peso with their huge store of silver. The U.S. threatened to go to war with Mexico. Let me see if I can pull it up. They might have scrubbed it. Hold on, let me see something real quick. U.S. threatens Mexico over backing peso with silver. They might have removed it. Threatens, let me put threatens war. Let's see. And that's one of the reasons why Trump is threatening Mexico now, because they're thinking about it again. See, with these tariffs and all of that stuff, that's just for the cameras. Mexico is they're contemplating on using some of their huge silver reserves to give a back into their peso so that they can have economic stability. And Trump is like, nah, that threatens our dollar, because our dollar has no sound backing, and we need to keep the dollar afloat. So we'll use any excuse to sanction you to try to keep your economy off kill. Hold on one second. I think they removed it. They removed it. But if you go to King's World News, I believe it still may be on there. King's World News. The U.S. literally threatened to go to war, not 20 years ago. I'm talking about last year with Mexico, when Mexico announced plans that maybe they would start drawing up papers to back their peso with silver. Is that an ally? Is that a friend? So, and let me point out one more conspicuous thing that most people overlook. Let's go back to the London Gold Exchange for a minute. How did London become the center for gold exchange, okay, and for silver? Huh? Ask me. Through colonization. Why? How can a country that has no gold mines anywhere in that country dominate gold trade? Has anybody ever thought about that? The UK has literally no gold mines at all. And yet it was the center of the gold trade for the global economies. I got you thinking now, and that's what I want. I want you to think, because that's what I want, to provoke thought. Because when that gray matter starts clicking, you build up yourself mentally. All right? Let's go a little further. Number 9. Credit card debt in the United States has crossed $1.2 trillion. Let's see, the $1.2 trillion mark for the very first time. So you got 37 trillion for the government. You got 1.2 trillion in credit card. What is it? 1.2 trillion in student loans. Does that look good? Does that tell us of any kind of future greatness, or does that tell us that pretty soon America is going to have to deal with these things that she keeps kicking down the road, because pretty soon the road runs out? And I believe we have approached that dead end. All right. Number 10. And I'm not going to keep you much longer. We only have number 10, 11, and number 12. Okay. And then we'll start wrapping it up for you guys. And I want to thank each and every one of you for staying tuned and for participating, for commenting, for watching, for sharing, for liking. Also, hit that like button. It does not cost you anything to hit the like button. Hit the like button. Get me back in the algorithm, because they continue to take me out of the algorithm. Okay. So it says number 10. Total. Oh, Lord. I didn't even know this. This is something new for me. Check this out. Number 10. Total household debt in the United States has crossed the $18 trillion mark for the very first time. 18 trillion. You got 37 trillion for the government. You got 1.2 trillion in credit card debt. You got 1.2 trillion dollars in student loans. You got over $1 trillion in car loans. Now you got 18 trillion. Over 18 trillion for household debt. It says Americans' household debt, well, they include the credit cards and the mortgage on this, and auto loans and student loans. It says is at an all-time high of 18.04 trillion, according to a report released Thursday by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Man, that does not look well. And look good for America. It does not look good for her. That's why she is hustling for war. I keep telling you, the time is at hand. The time is at hand. And when they've looked at all of the books and they've looked at, don't think that they have not sat down and looked at the stuff that we're talking about, but more in depth. So they have a more bleak picture than what we have. And they feel that the time is against them, which it is. And everything that they've tried has failed. So they're trying to go, now they're saying, look, we've done it every other way. Now we've just got to be brash and be a bull in the china shop. We got to just throw everything up against the wall, hoping that something will stick, and buy the empire and the Western world just a little more time at ruling. So they're going to go to war with Iran. They're going to go to war with China. They think that war with Iran will kickstart the industries, which would then hire people, which would then make the money revolve throughout the economy and stuff like that. These people they're lunatics, I'm telling you. They believe that war, because they did it, they've done these things before, they believe it's going to work this time. But the world is all wore out. The American people is wore out. And I'm not talking about worn out. I'm talking about war, W-A-R. They're worn out. That's why they're putting people in strategic positions for when the uprisings and the demonstrations happen, they can put them down quickly, smoothly, without fear of someone breaking ranks and a coup taking place. You don't have to believe me. You'll see. You'll see. So it says, let's see. I'm sorry, everybody, if I'm not getting all the chat up on all the comments up on the screen. I'm sorry. My screen is jumping a little bit. It says number 11. All right. The U.S. national debt has surpassed the $36 trillion mark for the first time ever. It said 37 trillion. That is bad. That's a bad omen. That's more than, let's see, let me go back to something. 20th largest economy. Let's see. China. That's more debt than China, Germany, Japan, and India, and the United Kingdom, and half of France's debt, economies put together. That's how much debt the United States has taken on. That's crazy, right? So I put these examples out there to show you. And when you see the examples, it gives you a better insight into where we are in real time. What they like to say in the intelligence sphere, we're giving you actionable intelligence. So let's wrap this up with this. Okay. Number 12, when you add up all forms of debt in our society, it comes to a grand total of more than $100 trillion. Now, matter of fact, let's go back to something real quick. He says a grand total of 100 trillion. That's not it. Give me 5 more minutes with you guys, okay? 5 or 6 more minutes. I want to play something. I'm going to show you that these numbers are not mathing up. Their math is not mathing up, okay? They're talking about, it puts it at a total of more than 100 trillion. Now, 10 years ago, I'm going to play something for you. 10 years ago, the debt was at $222 trillion. 15 years ago, the debt was at $222 trillion. And in 5-year increments, it has grown exponentially. So if we just double it each year, if we add $222 trillion each increment of 5 years, that puts us at least $666 trillion. I'm not the best mathematician, but I always know that 2 + 2 is 4, and I don't care how many times you count it, it's not going to add up to 75. So I want you to listen to this professor. I got to play part of this clip, and then we're going to come back to this. Because if the debt was 222 trillion back then when he was being interviewed, how the hell is it 100 trillion now? Huh? Let's look at it.
Lawrence Kotlikoff, economics professor at Boston University. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's great to be with you and great to be in Russia.
So you're the one who states that America is broke and is even in a worse state than Greece and Ireland. How so? What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, we economists look at all the bills the government has to pay, and in the U.S. case, we have enormous bills that have been kept off the books that are not official debts, but they're very real. For example, paying me my social security benefits, my old age pension, that's a real obligation. It's not part of official government debt, but it's, very important because there are 78 million baby boomers who are going to get these social security payments, and in addition, medical payments from the government. If you look at all those payments, they're about $3 trillion a year. So we have these huge bills. Nobody has thought about paying for them. And Congress and the presidents over the years have just focused on official debt and basically have not told the public about these big bills.
You said the amount of the fiscal gap in the United States is, in your estimation, $222 trillion. Is this right?
$222 trillion. If you take...
This is like an astonishing number, which is like 3 times the world's GDP. This is more than what the world makes.
20 times higher than the official debt in the hands of the public, which is 11 trillion. So if you add all these spending obligations into the distant future, and you compare them with all the taxes, and you include in the spending all the interest payments and principal payments on the debt, on the official debt, you have 222 trillion in present value. Now, this is 12% of GDP on an ongoing basis. In other words, we need to get 12% more of GDP, either in tax increases or spending cuts, in order to have the fiscal gap be zero. We're doing far too little too late. It's like operating on a person with cancer, and you say, well, there's a big tumor here. We're just going to take a little bit out today, and we'll come back in 5 years and we'll take out some more. But maybe in 5 years the patient is dead because the tumor got bigger.
Now, listen, I want you to understand something. That was in 2015, $222 trillion in debt. Now, we moved 5 years from that. That's 2020. And remember, this is the area when the pandemic happened, and we know that they said the United States would lose a huge part of its economy. As a matter of fact, let's see. Let's see if I can pull it up. I got it somewhere. Let's see, RT. Let me see if I can pull it up. RT US to lose trillions due to pandemic. All right. So now, there was a study on February. I mean, there was an article that came out February 20th, 2020, and it says that the coronavirus pandemic could wipe out 1.1 trillion off the global economy. Now, hold on one second. Let's go back to something. Let's see if I can pull it up. All right, let's go. Let's see if they'll. They moved the dang old thing. 16. They scrubbed the internet of this article. 16 trillion. NGDP. Ha! Found it anyhow. I found it anyhow. The article, October 18th, 2020. Here's an article. The $16 trillion bug. Pandemic could cost U.S. economy its entire annual output. Okay? 16 trillion. Now, the reason I brought that up is for this. If in 2015, the debt was $222 trillion, and all of the economic barometers deteriorated at breakneck speed and so drastically, and then we go to 2020, that means at least $222 trillion in debt was accumulated. So that puts it as what? 444 trillion, right? Then we go to 2025, right? And we just read all of the bad news from the economy, which is worse than in 2025. So at least there's another $222 trillion in debt added. So that is $666 trillion in debt, right? At least. Not 1 trillion, not 9 trillion, not 100 trillion, but at least 666 trillion in debt. At least. And that's just if we're going to be generous about it. Okay? According to their numbers, according to what their economists had wrote and spoken. So the math ain't mathing up. Right? Their math, like they say, their math ain't mathing up. So 12, it says, when you add up all of the debt in our society, it comes to a grand total of more than $100 trillion. More than 100 trillion could be 200 trillion, 300 trillion, 400 trillion, 500, 600, 700. It could be any of those numbers, more than. But they don't want to tell you that. They want to put it at the smaller end as not. They want to alarm you with that, but they don't want to show you the true picture, the true scope of it, as to have you outraged that it's almost $2 quadrillion in debt. You understand? So the article wasn't lying when it says over $1 trillion, but it didn't specify what that number was over $1 trillion. But according to the math of economists, it has to be a minimum of 666 trillion. Right? And 666 trillion is closer to $2 quadrillion than it is to 100 trillion, right? I'm not the best mathematician, but I know that much, okay? And it says, this has never happened before in the entire history of our nation. Earlier today, I was amused by a Newsweek article that stated that top economists are concerned that our economy may be on the path toward recession or a shutdown that could rival those of 2020, and 2008. Around the time that video that I played came out, a little bit right after that. Okay? Economists have expressed fears that the American economy may be on a path toward recession or a downturn that could rival those of 2020 or in 2008. These concerns have been heightened by falling retail sales and associated layoffs, the anticipated impact of Donald Trump's tariffs on prices and domestic consumption. American stock indexes, which lost over $2 trillion over the last couple of days, a week or so, trailing their European counterparts in recent months. The Federal Reserve statements indicating that inflationary struggles are far from over, and data pointing to sharp decline in consumer confidence. Come on, man. Our economy is not on a path toward recession. The truth is that our economy is in a recession right now. Let's be real. Everywhere around us, people are in extreme economic pain. Unfortunately, listen to this part. What we have experienced so far is just the beginning. So I would encourage you to brace yourself for what is coming next, because it isn't going to be pleasant. So think about that. In 2010, the U.S. debt was 3 times the world's economy. There was a scripture, not a Quranic scripture, but a biblical scripture that said, in the day of thy downfall, none will come to thy aid. When we look at America's debt, even if the world put all of their economic prowess together, they couldn't extricate her from the debt burden that she now finds herself in, because that was in 2010, and it was 3 times the world's economic output. And now we're 10 years or 15 years from that, right? No, we're 10, no, it was, I think it was 2015. So we're 10 years away from that. And things have deteriorated much, much greater on an economic scale, right? So how do you believe that the people will react? Well, I've told you how the people will react. The exact way Gerald Celente says, that when all else has failed, what do? They take the people to war. We're headed for war. I expect you, and I implore you to please buckle up. It's going to be some rough rides ahead, because the economy is going to collapse. Store up on food, medicine, supplies, and everything, because we're looking at the end of an era, an economic collapse, the likes of it, something that you've never seen before. As my friend Gregory Mannarino often says, when this thing goes down, it will be biblical. He says that it will cost more lives than a nuclear exchange. That's something to put on your mind to think about. So buckle up, prepare for the worst, expect the worst, but pray for the best. On that note, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid. And I want to say to each and every one of you, do right by others, not because there's some material gain or some accolades to get from it. Do right by others because it's the right and humane, and even more so, the godly thing to do. Because even when no one is watching, God Almighty is watching you. He may sit high, but he looks low. And know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth. But know this, that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hit the like button and share. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you all. We're out of here. Peace.
can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost